Website.
This is the one Ryan sent you.
Exactly.
And it's wrong?
Exactly. No,
No.
it's right. It's just depending on if you want to like finish each one or if you want to keep scrolling down and go back to the agenda. So this one, the agenda's right there and you can push it. Tap and scroll. I think I did this one last time and I found that was more complicated. So what I did was just go to the town.
My street.
Well,
On my street, I have a salt pool.
how did you get there from
Just type
Vandy?
in town of Woodfin.
I kind of did too.
Okay, go down here. Go ahead. Do it back down here again. All right, let me do it again. Get it up here.
Not even on the line.
It'd help if I could spell, wouldn't it? I haven't got it yet. Okay, now,
Let me leave.
all right, so go here.
So I was there for
Do government.
took about
And
an hour.
then do
I was there for a total of maybe 4 hours.
town council.
Good food and everything.
When you come down here, you hit agenda.
Go back.
Agenda and any of the blue ones. Then you can just touch on it and it'll take you there.
It's an outpatient facility.
$250,000. What to do with that building? It's too much money.
Yeah, cubic size,
To
like
do some of the stuff with that building.
so
Is
I
it
could
to like make it
Because I
into
just explained it to me.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe it has to do
This one I read.
yeah.
And it was, we were all there for the same
Do,
thing.
can we make it into a
See,
pole
my
barn?
thought was we could
An assembly line. Something else.
That's what I think we were talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
for a
I
hot
didn't
dog
have to
stand.
stay.
You could upfit it to
I keep it in, I keep it in.
needs, you know.
Yeah. Or I think the other thought too, because there's so little parking in there, if you just make it like a pole barn
I believe it's time, or you ready?
and put bathrooms
Is the
in
budget resolution part of
So
the
that-
consent
there.
agenda?
Develop it.
Call a meeting to order, this being Tuesday, August the 16th, 2022. Town of Woodfin Board of Commissioners meeting. First item, you'll notice says invocation, and what we do is have a moment of silence in case you have someone you wish to remember who could be hospitalized or have other problems. So we'll take a moment and just have a moment of silence so you can remember those people. Okay, in accordance with the Code of Ethics adopted by the Board, all town commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which will have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? Also, does any board member have a financial interest in any public contact coming before this board today? There being none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote. And the first item will be approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next item is the consent agenda, and we have 5 items on there, and Shannon, I'll let you go over those.
Thank you, Mayor. So as the mayor indicated, we have 5 items on the consent agenda. The first item is simply the adoption of the minutes from the July 19th regular Board of Commissioners meeting. Second item is a budget amendment for Silverline Park. This is related to some storm drain infrastructure. This is really a clerical error that we're just trying to correct. This was money that had already been approved to be transferred from the general fund to the capital projects fund, and we just neglected to make that change when we were in our last amendment where we were trying to align the capital projects budgets. That was back in June. And then the third item is the approval of the contracts to purchase the rollout of garbage and recycling carts. Per the board's adopted policy on, for purchasing the contracts, anything over 90,000 comes before the board, so that's included here with a copy of those contracts. The fourth item is a resolution authorizing the surplus of some skate park ramps. These were discovered in storage. They're probably over 10 years old. The town doesn't have any use for these any longer, but we recognize that somebody else may have some use for them, that they still have some value, so we figured just go ahead and surplus them. And then the last item is a resolution to set a public hearing for a right-of-way closure on Wellington Drive. You all may recall, this is a two-step process. The first step is just the resolution to set the date to consider the closure, so we're not weighing or evaluating the pros and cons of the closure today. This is just to set the date, which would be set for September 20th. And that is the consent agenda. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Or
Yes, sir. On the budget resolution regarding Kirby, I have two questions. Have you reviewed their security policy? We're gonna put RFID chips in these things, all of them.
Yes.
Are we aware of, I would imagine the town has a privacy policy somewhere. Do we know about Kirby's, if they're going to, potentially through those you can track things? Do we have an agreement with them about security and privacy of information?
We are actually the ones who hold the data. We get the RFID numbers, and then we're gonna match them to the addresses. So this is information that the town will hold, not Kirby.
Do we have an information privacy policy in place?
We do.
Okay, I just didn't know.
Sorry, I can't pull it up.
That's okay, as long as we do. And the second question, I did for a guerrilla survey on my neighborhood. Recycling, we're gonna cut it in half every other week instead of every week.
That is the plan.
To me, I guess we're gonna go a little bit bigger, but is our bill to them also gonna be commensurately cut by close to half?
It's not quite half, but it is reduced.
Do you know what percent?
I don't, without looking at the full contract for their service, it's not half.
We have that contract on the agenda
I
for
see it.
consideration next month. The actual recycling contract, this month just to purchase the bins.
Well, that contract is in the packet though, so that's why I'm asking tonight.
Oh, it wasn't supposed to be.
You're not
We
approving.
pulled it off. Yeah, we're not approving that this evening.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
In the words of Emily Littell, never mind.
We had originally intended to have it on this agenda, so I think it must have gotten pulled in by accident. We didn't get the contract details ironed out with them in time, so that's.
I would like to ask that question next month though, if you don't mind.
Good to know.
We're going for recycling bins at the size of that of our waste can to the 96-gallon size. And their recommendation from recycling professionals were to go with bi-weekly. And we felt like we would be able to collect more and save the town a little bit of money in the process.
As long as that savings gets passed along to us in some logical frame. Okay, thanks.
any other questions or comments? We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make it. So move.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to public comment. We have two people that have signed up for public comment. First one is Ben Irvin.
Mayor, I believe that's relevant to the public hearing that's later on the agenda.
Oh, okay, I guess Dave Bendel is same, okay.
See, hearing on the agenda.
Okay, so we don't have any public comment? Anyone wish to speak?
I don't see a public hearing on the agenda. Am I missing it?
It's the ordinance amendments. Those are all public hearings.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business. First item is zoning ordinance amendment, ordinance 2002-0802. I guess we'll proceed on. Are you ready, Adrian?
I am.
Okay.
So as staff continues to review the zoning and subdivision ordinances, we've noticed some changes that need to be, we recommend being made to the ordinance for clarification. This tonight being in reference to lot width standards. So it's changes to several sections of the zoning ordinance that are the zoning district designations. So right now, the tables in each of those zoning districts list the dimensional standards, and the lot width is listed as lot width at the building line, but the building line is not defined in the ordinance. So it's up for interpretation of what that means, where that needs to be on the lot. So in an effort to clarify that, we're removing the words building line from each district under the dimensional standards for each district and adding a definition of lot width to read the distance between the sidelines of a lot measured at the front setback line. So the lot width minimum would have to be at the front setback line. So, for example, the R43 district requires the lot width to be 100 feet. That 100 feet would have to be at the front setback line.
Is that the front of the dwelling, or
Yeah,
not necessarily road front, or,
it's a certain footage from the property line
right, okay,
back.
thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay, do we have a motion regarding the amendment?
So moved.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, this,
This is a public
yeah,
hearing.
you need to,
I think they
Oh.
can do the motion, I think, and then
I don't know if you declared a public hearing open, I thought we got an executive.
Which way you want to do it?
Well,
If we're gonna have it, yeah, mine didn't say anything about a hearing here, so.
yes, yeah, completely agree.
Okay, since we're having a public hearing, I'll open the public hearing at 5:10 PM. Does anyone wish to speak regarding this zoning ordinance change? Anyone wish to speak? One more time. Anyone, any comments regarding the zoning ordinance amendment? Okay, if not, I'll close this public hearing at 5:11 PM. And with that, do we have a motion to approve the amendment?
So moved.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 2, steep slope ordinance amendment.
So we came to you in June with some amendments to the steep slope ordinance, and as part of that discussion with you and the planning board, we were discussing accessory structure height, and we put a maximum in the previous amendments, but we were talking about retaining walls being separate from that requirement. So we've come back with a recommendation on what that should look like. So we'll keep the 20-foot height maximum for accessory structures like outbuildings and greenhouses, but add an exception for retaining walls to be a maximum of 12 feet. That 12 feet comes from a survey of site plans of steep slope areas that have included retaining walls that would meet that 12-foot maximum. So we thought that was a good number. And we've included a reference to fences in the steep slope ordinance as well, but it's the same requirements that are already in the zoning ordinance. And that's 6 feet maximum in the front yard and 8 feet in the side or rear yard. In addition, when we came to you in June, we added a definition of structure to the steep slope ordinance, but also as part of that conversation realized we have a definition of accessory structure in the zoning ordinance, and we'll reference that definition with the steep slope. So we just recommend removing that definition of structure from the steep slope ordinance.
Any questions for Adrian?
I have just one. I noted in here, to, in the staff analysis, that in unique instances when it needs to be a taller retaining wall, that the Board of Adjustment could consider a variance or conditional zoning. Is that correct?
They could consider a variance or a conditional use, yes.
Yeah, conditional use, sorry. Okay, thank you.
The Board of Adjustment can, but they could also pursue a conditional zoning plan that would come before the Board of Commissioners. That's another one.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comment? Okay, I believe we're supposed to have a public hearing for this, so at this time, I'll open the public hearing at 5:13 PM. Does anyone wish to speak? Quiet group tonight. Does anyone wish to speak? Okay, one more time. Does anyone wish to speak? Well, I'll close this public hearing at 5:14 PM.
Can I point out one thing? On the staff report for all of these public hearings, there is a suggested motion for whoever wants to make that motion. Could just read that motion if you agree with the amendment.
Okay, do we have someone wish to make a motion and read the motion? Eric?
I'll make that motion. I move to approve the proposed steep slope text amendments to Chapter 40 of the Town of Woodfin Code of Ordinances. To find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, and meets the needs of the community, in that the proposed amendment will, 1, provide greater clarity and predictability in regard to development requirements, thereby promoting economic development, and 2, advance public health, safety, and welfare by ensuring compatible infill development with the surrounding area, and 3, discourage development of excessively steep slopes, mitigating risk for erosion and landslides in the town of Woodfin.
You want to repeat that one more time?
I second it.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes. Next item, zoning map amendment, Sherwood Heights, ordinance 2002-0804.
So this rezoning application includes 5 subject properties currently zoned Mountain Village, and they have been zoned Mountain Village since they were annexed into the town in 2009. At the request of the community, staff studied the properties and for development feasibility of the Mountain Village zoning designation. That zoning designation requires mixed-use developments with a range of housing types and non-residential uses included, such as offices or retail space. And we recommend to rezone the 5 parcels listed on the screen to R21, which is a lower density, half-acre, single-family development zoning district. Should be noted that the original application included 7 parcels, but 2 of those parcels have been removed after it was realized that there was a pending development application still active on those parcels. So the total acreage included in the study area is 110 acres, and I don't know if you can really see the blue outline on the parcels that are included there. But the proposed rezoning is consistent with the Woodfin communities to the north that are already zoned R21. That's our Versant Ventana communities, and the parcels to the south that are in the city of Asheville jurisdiction, also zone low-density residential. So based on the current development pattern of the area, staff recommends the rezoning from Mountain Village to R21, but also for consistency with the comprehensive plan and the goals of ensuring compatible infill development, limiting density in a manner that is better supported by the existing infrastructure, allowing the administrative application of standards that would preserve the wooded steep slopes and preserving the rural nature of the area.
Any questions?
Yes, sir. Out of the parcels that were listed, Adrian, how many of those came when you had the meeting? And what did the property owners have to say in general? Were they for it?
Everybody that came to the meeting was for it. Not sure who represented which parcels though, but everybody that did speak was for the rezoning.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
On that note, I should say we did discuss this with the planning board, have a public hearing with them, and they voted to recommend approval of the change.
When we get to it, have you got a recommended motion here
Believe
also?
so.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, any other questions before I open this public hearing? Okay, I'll open a public hearing regarding zoning map amendment at 5:18 PM, and we've got two people that signed up to speak for that. One of them is Ben Irvin. If you'd come up to the podium, please, sir. Identify yourself.
What's your head?
My name is Ben Irvin. I live at 110 Robin Hood Road in Asheville, and I got the notice because my back property line, I can step right into Woodfin and then back. Okay. I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to speak for a minute. On behalf of the Citizens for Responsible Land Use, which is an organization I'm part of, we fully support this rezoning proposal. We thank the commission for considering it, and the town staff and the planning board for bringing it forward. We hope you'll support it. The Mountain Village zoning district is described in the ordinances as, quote, appropriate within higher density residential areas, and intended to be, quote, located near employment centers, shopping facilities, roads, and other urban infrastructure capable of handling the demand generated by higher density residential development, unquote. So the land, as it's been described under consideration here, clearly doesn't fit that description. Can't even get to it from Woodfin, and changing the zoning does seem to be entirely appropriate. But I had the question, how did we get to this point? Why is that property zoned that way?
Sir, you're competing with the rain. Can you speak loudly?
I'll speak as loud. Is that better?
Thank you, yes. sir.
Okay.
Yes.
How did we get there? Why was this question of what the appropriate zoning was apparently never aired before? So I'd like to take just 2 minutes to tell the story I've been able to discover by looking at the records. Some of y'all lived through it and may know it way better than I do. But I'm trying to be as honest and complete as I can. I'm sure this is incomplete, but it's what I could find out. So back, I think somebody said in 2009, when the owner of the property petitioned it to be annexed into Woodfin, some of the neighbors objected to the annexation, but I can't find any record that the Mountain Village zoning designation was actually the subject of a hearing or a review by a planning board. May have happened, but a lot of the records from back then are not easy to find. Fast forward to about 2018, the land was sold to a new owner. And a year later, that owner submitted a subdivision plat that split the biggest piece of this land. Now, there's a few little single-family lots that I'm not talking about, but they're part of this. Splitting it into 4 parts. That subdivision would have been another opportunity to review how this was zoned, especially since the new parcels would obviously be smaller than the original one. Maybe they weren't appropriate for Mountain Village. Strangely, though, that subdivision was recorded as a recombination plat. It was certified by the Woodfin planner, Michael Saunders, that it was exempt from review by the Zoning Board of Adjustment and Review. You can see that right on the plat. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I could read the ordinance. And that subdivision didn't meet any of the 5 conditions that would have allowed it to be exempted from review by the board. Y'all hearing me okay? Okay, good. Any case, that was another opportunity to look at how this was zoned and to maybe rethink it, but it was missed. So that kind of brings us up to now. And it seems like to get approved, a Mountain Village project is not required to consider the effect it has on its neighbors' property values, on its neighbors' quality of life, effects on the traffic situation, effects on the topography, really any impact outside of its boundaries. It just has to meet a bunch of specific things that happen inside of the place where it is. It has to have a 20-foot buffer. That is in the rules. So it seems to me, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's really important that any land that gets zoned Mountain Village has to be looked at super careful to make sure that these other things I just mentioned aren't going to be a problem down the line, because the person that's proposing development doesn't have to worry about any of that. So I just want you to know that even if you approve this rezoning proposal, there's still a couple of properties there that are remaining in the Mountain Village because they're subject to this pending application. And so I hope you, as a town council and commission, will do everything you can to support your planning board, to support your planning staff and your town administrator as they grapple with the consequences of that. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Dave, is that Bendel?
Yeah, I signed the wrong sheet. I thought it was just a consent. I agree with Mr. Urban.
Okay.
So,
Okay, do we have any other comments? Anyone else wish to speak regarding this? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all. My name is Jessica Bernstein. I live across the street from one of the parcels that was dropped from the rezoning application. My husband and I also own property on Riverside Drive. It's where we've had our business for the last 12 years. So invested in the future of Woodfin as a business and landowner, and also particularly concerned about this item that's before you this evening. Very supportive of the proposed rezoning. It's not all that common for a town to initiate a rezoning such as this, but for all of the reasons that your staff has identified, it's the appropriate step for this location, which is a very sensitive environmental location. So I'm just wanted to say thank you to the town for doing that and taking that on. As someone who lives across the street from one of the locations that was taken out, actually I border that on 3 sides. So I'm extremely concerned about what is going forward for all of the reasons why these 5 properties are so well suited to a lower density single family development and not a high intensity multifamily commercial mixed use development. That doesn't go away just because those 2 properties, those 2 parcels had to be taken off of the application. All of those serious concerns still lie on those additional properties. I know that's not under your consideration with this item, but I have to speak to that as someone in the community directly affected, but also we are all affected by what happens on the mountainsides here. And we have to take every opportunity that we have to protect the land. So just keep that in mind, and again, thank you for taking these efforts to rezone these 5 properties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'll close this public hearing at 5:26 p.m. And with that, do we have a motion regarding, Eric?
Sure, I'll make that motion. I move to approve the proposed rezoning of 5 properties identified in the staff report and exhibit maps from the Mountain Village District to R21 Residential District, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, and meets the needs of the community, in that the proposed amendment will, 1, ensure compatible infill development with the surrounding area by promoting development that is consistent with the character of the existing neighborhood and consistent with the existing pattern of development. 2, limit density in a manner that is better supported by the existing water, sewer, and street infrastructure. 3, allow for the administrative application of environmental standards that would preserve wooded steep slopes, mitigating risk of erosion and landslides, and better manage stormwater runoff on surrounding properties. And 4, preserve the rural character of agricultural and wooded areas.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item, adoption of rules of procedure for the Woodfin Board of Commissioners. Shannon?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the commission. This next item on your agenda is a proposed set of rules of procedure. And just to kind of explain this a little bit more, rules of procedure are commonly adopted by governing bodies as well as advisory bodies within the municipal government. And they essentially establish guidance on setting, holding, and recording meetings, and helps to establish the appropriate expectations for conduct at meetings. And these are adopted. So these are things that the board or public body has some control over. Much of it is relatively straightforward, very standard language, commonly applied by most governing boards. Some of it is statutorily guided, so we probably don't want to alter those rules to any great extent. But beyond that, there is some customization that can happen with these rules. So that is something that this body can consider when adopting these particular set of rules of procedure. The outline or the draft that is proposed in your packet comes from a template that was produced by the School of Government. And then we've made a few simplifications, looking at a number of surveying other towns' rules of procedure, looking to where they kind of simplified some of those rules. Where it was appropriate, we went ahead and applied those simplifications as well. There are a few, as I mentioned, there are some opportunities for customization. There are a few things that I think would be appropriate for this board to consider. First, to identify or to mention, you'll see throughout the document the use of the word town council in lieu of Board of Commissioners. I did that when it was discovered recently, the 2020 ordinance that changed the then Board of Aldermen to the Woodfin Town Council, with all members being named council members, and also there was a change from using the term mayor pro tem to vice mayor. The ordinance explains trying to move towards something that was more gender neutral, more common, and something that was a little bit simpler and easier for the layperson to understand and recognize. Secondly, there is an opportunity to remove the mayor's recitation. In absence of any rules of procedure, the recitation is very helpful, very valuable, because it asks whether or not any of the members have any conflict, and it reminds them of their duty to vote. Both of those items are now incorporated into the rules of procedure, so it's kind of baked into how you conduct yourselves. So we can dispense with that. It is up to you all if you want to do that or not. It's not a bad thing to do. It just kind of reminds everybody of what their duty is and you know, and to disclose any conflicts. But it's not necessary now once these rules are adopted. There's a question about whether or not rule number 16 is even needed. As far as we can tell, this is sort of a creation of the author of that School of Government template. And what Rule 16 says is that any item that comes before this body, should it be denied by a supermajority, so that would be 5 out of 7 of the council, that this item cannot return for a period of 6 months. Some cities, some municipalities have this rule, some don't. It's not a requirement, it's just something that a number of towns and cities have adopted as a good practice. There is a little bit of a compromise with this one, though. We could keep that rule and then just add that it's a 6-month waiting period unless a majority of the council members choose to waive that rule. So that's another option. And if that's acceptable to this body, I think I would recommend that, and we would just approve the rules as proposed with that change. Another thing we can consider is explicitly prohibiting the invocation. That was something that 2 of our commissioners requested. It is included in this draft. So you'll see this is represented both in rule number 6, where we take out the invocation. It's not listed as one of the items on the agenda. Let's see, so it's not represented there. And then we also specifically add a notation saying that, no meeting shall include an invocation or any such moment of silence. So that is something that is up for consideration. And then lastly is probably the one that might be of greatest interest to the body is how to accept public comment. So there's I think 4 or 5 items under that rule. That's rule number 5, I believe. And that the main things that I think I want to bring your attention to is to first point out that any individual or group will have an opportunity to request to be on the agenda. We've already been doing this. A lot of what we're doing has already, or a lot of what's represented in the rules is something that this body has commonly practiced, and that is one of those. Also, we established time limits for the speakers. Some cities do 3 minutes, some do 5. There's no rule. It's at the preference of the body. We do recommend that for individuals representing a group, that we could allow them a little bit more time if others, cede their time to the speaker who's representing the group. 10 minutes seems to be a good number that a lot of towns and cities go with. I think the other items in there are relatively straightforward, so I didn't highlight them here, but those are the areas where we saw opportunity for customization. Are there any questions?
I have one for number 4. Has that been a problem? Have people been complaining?
It was just a request. We had
From who?
From 2 commissioners.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ronnie, I was one of those, and I submitted that request following the last Supreme Court term in which the separation between church and state got awfully fuzzy.
Well, you've been a lawyer, I understand that.
And
I don't in this small town understand.
to your question about whether people have complained, actually, the same.
She told me, 2 commissioners.
So the same day that I submitted that request, we had our public forum, that town hall we had at the community center, and actually following that, unprompted, someone did come up and spoke to Shannon and I both about her.
One person?
Yeah, her displeasure with,
Okay.
and discomfort with the.
No, we're
past
close to
practices.
8,000 people in the town of Woodfin, so keep that in mind.
I have a question. So if we approve this, will you refer to me as a councilman?
Council member.
Council member, so that's how we're supposed to refer to ourselves as opposed to commissioner?
Council member, yeah. I mean, I think if your preference is councilman, we can do that, but I think the practice.
But that's going backward from the gender neutral.
Yeah, I would agree.
Justification.
I mean, I think council member is the more appropriate, or council person, some
What
people.
was wrong with commissioner? Why did y'all change it? I'm just curious.
Well, I think the point is the one ordinance that we found that declared state law says that you can style yourselves
Right.
however you want to as a city, a town, village, and this board as alderman, commissioner, or council. Do any one of those you want to. But what we actually have on paper says you decided to be a town council.
We just discovered this?
Yeah, we did, and
How commissioner got into it is a real mystery.
however, should this body choose to stay with Board of Commissioners, we would actually have to go and adopt a new ordinance that changes your name from town council to Board of Commissioners.
When we changed from alderman, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, I guess. The board at that time felt like, well, Debbie Giesentanner was one of them. She didn't feel like she was an alderman, and we changed it. And how we came up with commissioner, I don't know, it was just a luck of the draw, I guess. From that the councilman, council person, or council.
Well,
whatever you
about
wanna
all
call it.
counties are commissioners, and I think that's but I think got a question there from,
So it was Debbie that recommended
Commissioner, yeah.
yeah, so that's how I got changed, and that's what was wrong. Just
Yeah.
recollected from what I covered in that meeting.
you're
Well,
right.
the ordinance that was adopted specifically says town council. and council member and vice mayor. And that's the only thing we have.
We've got the minutes, should have the minutes for it, or I do, if you don't.
I don't think there's any lack of certainty. There's an ordinance.
Exactly. I wish it was commissioner, but I will follow the ordinance and the law and refer to myself as councilperson McAllister.
Well, I agree with you. I prefer that commissioner, because that was neutral.
Yeah. From the staff's
But y'all
perspective.
passed it, though.
From the staff's perspective, council is a little bit easier to distinguish. I think there's a little bit of overcoming what we're used to. So the Board of Commissioners has been broadly adopted for a number of years now, but I think it would just take a little time. Eventually, everybody would get used to town council
So the
and council.
Board of
member.
Elections y'all will notify them to change the labels on ballots and the website and all of that stuff? Because it is Woodfin Town of Commissioners is how the election was held.
Yeah, we would,
Is our election ballot?
I'm sure it's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling your leg. Okay, I'm done.
From the staff's perspective, the town council, it helps to distinguish this body, the governing body, from our other advisory bodies. We have the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Board. And so people frequently will say board member, and we often don't know, or they don't know who they're referring to. So,
Don't laugh, council person.
And I have to salute you, I mean, as I think I told you all, serving a town, went through some similar growing pains. One of those was deciding to get away from aldermen, because I think etymologically it means old men. I mean, so it's-
Well, what's your point?
I mean, not throwing any stones at anybody, but I don't think that's where it comes from. You know, I think in addition to the clarity from your own boards having separation from the Board of Commissioners, the County Board of Commissioners, which is, you're exactly right, Ron, by law, that's the only thing they're known as. I find that useful too. The council member, I think, is a pretty good old one-size-fits-all term. Just suggesting.
So for the sake of going through these items and understanding how we want to land on the different rules, might I recommend that we just sort of take each of these and do a straw poll to just see if we're good with going one way or the other? And then we can, the motion to adopt the rules can include any revisions that we need to do.
Number one is done because we have an ordinance on the books, right?
Yeah, unless there is a vote to adopt a new ordinance. So I think, yes, that one is done. Shall we move on to number two? Okay. The mayor's recitation, keep it in or take it out?
No need if
As
it's in the
far as I'm
rules.
concerned.
Yeah, if it's
Just
already in the
saves
rules.
the mayor from having to
I read it
restate
every
it.
month, yeah.
Yeah. So take that out.
I hadn't noticed anybody not voting, have you?
So wait, I'm not sure if are we taking that out? or-
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The rule number 16, not allowing another application to come before the body for a period of 6 months if it's denied. Keep that in?
Let me point out a couple brief things about that. It's actually motion number 16 under rules.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Right,
Yes.
No problem, but it's, and that one threw me for a loop too. I have, and I was telling Shannon this, I've had clients where they didn't have this rule, or they followed the rules, Robert's Rule of Orders, that don't really have anything quite like this, that says, don't bring it up again for 6 months, give us all a break. I don't think any of you are doing this, but I've seen members of boards that are are grinding an axe and bringing the same thing up that everybody else has said, we're done with this, we won't talk about it anymore. And I think it could be a useful rule. I mean, I know they have wished they could adopt a rule kind of like that. And I guess in really extreme cases, they could change their policies and say, we don't even follow Robert's rules unless we, except for here where we're trying to tell this person to give it a rest. So, and the other thing I want to tell you is under motion, I think it's number 5, under the rule, lets you suspend all of the rules so if something gets urgent that you had said this about, it's not like it's set in stone and you really can't legally bring it back up within 6 months. So I would suggest you keep it in.
And you know, if there's reason to review an application within that 6 months time period, you can waive that rule and just waive that 6-month waiting period. Okay, the invocation.
I don't agree with doing away with it. Whether it's, either way, a moment of silence or if we actually have prayer.
Should we do a straw poll on this one? Okay, if all of those in favor of removing it, can you please raise your hands? Okay, so we have a minority, so I guess we'll keep that in.
I'm sorry? So say it again?
So only 3 out of the 7 asked to have it removed, or support removing it.
Okay, thank you.
And then how to accept the public comment? Are we good with the 5-minute limit, 10 minutes for a group?
Let me ask a question.
Yes.
I'm fine with the 5 minutes. I don't have a problem with that, or 3 minutes or whatever, but I was looking back through some old minutes back in the minute book, and it was back in the late 70s, early 80s, where this board set a time limit of 3 minutes. Now, is that gonna interfere with, are we gonna have to do more than just say, okay, we're going to 5 minutes now? Because I don't have a problem with 5 minutes or 3 minutes or.
It's entirely up to you. A lot of folks do 3 minutes, and then that works kind of well for the 10-minute group. Like if you have 3 people who want to cede their time, that totals almost 10 minutes. So we can go to 3 minutes if that's the preference. I suspect in that hearing that you probably reviewed, that might have just been the practice that they applied at the time, but there was no rule to support that, so.
I'm fine with this.
5 minutes?
Yeah, the rest of you?
I am,
Okay. 5 minutes and 3 minutes for a group, or 10 minutes for a group?
yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I believe that wraps that up. So if we could have a motion to adopt the rules of procedure with the changes that we've identified in this discussion.
Okay, you've heard Shannon. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the Town of Woodfin Council Rules of Procedure as proposed with one typographical correction.
Okay. You can give that to me later.
All right.
And well, so we will, just to recap what the changes are, we will be removing the recitation. We'll leave rule, or motion 16 in. We'll leave the invocation in, and we'll keep the public comment as drafted.
I'll second that.
I need to change my straw poll vote
Okay.
about the invocation. I had it backwards, what a recitation is and what an invocation
Oh,
is.
okay, gotcha.
And I don't think that as a government body, we should have any kind of a religious,
Okay.
you know, I think if people want to pray, they can. But I like the recitations the way they are, and it's a reminder of why we're here and what we should be focused on. But that religious connection just crosses a boundary that I don't think we should cross.
So that swings the vote to 4 in favor of removing the invocation.
And I struggle with it, I honestly do, because I know exactly what the Supreme Court says in separation of church and state, and I guess I feel a little bit like by just not calling it an invocation, but a moment of silence, I guess I shifted it a bit, but,
May I make a comment? In preparing for tonight, I did a little research, and I'm ignorant. I was surprised to learn that almost all of our founding fathers do not want church and state combined. Some of them, very famous, were quoted at the time as saying, "We are not a Christian nation. Do not make that mistake." So I've been operating my adult life on a misconception, but I'm satisfied myself that Madison and the others, wow, I was wrong, and that's why I'd like for it to be removed personally.
I just feel like some of the things we discussed, we need to pray about.
Nobody's preventing it, though. You can always pray.
Good.
Okay, so,
just not during the meeting.
who is the motion maker?
Well, not out loud as a group
When
and
everybody-
naming a Christian God, but you can do whatever you want in your mind.
Right.
I'm praying right now.
So are you okay with that amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Second for the amended motion, which I think we now understand to take out the implication.
Second.
And that takes out the typographical error also.
I caught that, actually, I caught that error already, thank you.
Okay, you've heard the amended motion and the second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Me.
Okay. Have one opposed.
All right, shall we move on to the next item?
Yeah.
All right. So the next item on the agenda under new business is local partnership opportunities. And what I mean by that, when I describe local partnerships, it is very common for municipalities and counties to partner with, most commonly, a nonprofit in your community to provide certain services or products for the benefit of the community. So this is, as I mentioned, this is a very common practice. It's something that the town has done and most towns do. Support can be in different forms. It can be a monetary contribution, either one time or on an ongoing annual basis, or it can be also done through in-kind support. So things like fee waivers or offering traffic control or public safety for special events, things of that nature. Any funds, though, or any support that is offered and supported by the town has to meet two tests, and these are two lawful legal tests. The first is that the service has to be something that a local government is authorized to perform. So that would be things related to public safety, community development, parks and recreation, economic development, things of that nature. Sort of what the town is built to perform. These are the things that these are the kinds of services that we can support. It also has to benefit the public, and it's often also referred to as serving a public purpose. So it shouldn't be money or in-kind services to support an individual. It should be really something that is for the benefit of the larger community or available to the larger community, not just for one person. In your staff report, I talk a little bit about how our in-kind support was structured and was broken down in 2022. I also talk about our current fiscal year, 2023. We have both in-kind and monetary support included in our 2023 budget. The in-kind support includes support for Woodfin Elementary through traffic control. This is our police and our sanitation staff every year for the annual 5K that's held in the spring. We pay our staff overtime to help with that event. We also support MANA and Catholic Charities by approving a fee waiver of the use of our community center, and that is to support the monthly community food bank, which serves many needy families in our area.
Ain't it funny how we separate church and state till it becomes money? Then we don't separate it. That's all I'll say.
Moving on to the monetary contributions, we have three items that are specific line items in our budget. One is for Woodfin Elementary for a relatively small amount. Last year, we bumped that amount up fairly significantly. We added some additional money to support the construction of their playground, and that's a project that's still ongoing. We also had money for the Golden Age Club. This is a seniors organization in Woodfin that organizes and certain outings and other activities specifically for our seniors, anybody over the age of 55. And then we also have money set aside for the Buncombe County Homeowners Grant. We participated in this last year. I believe that was the first year we did it. It was something of a response to the difficulties that a lot of families were experiencing as a result of the revaluation, as well as COVID just added additional strain on a number of families. Most of that money, I think, was used for property tax assistance, but based on the description in their website, it can be used for a number of housing-related.
Shannon, that 10,400, is that based on last year?
Yes.
Okay.
In addition to the money that we have as part of our fiscal year '23 budget, we also are holding a little over $50,000 in a reserve account. It's held in our general fund, but it's in a separate account. And we're holding it separately because that money was donated to serve the residents of Woodfin. And we feel that it's appropriate to consider reallocating this money to serve those residents for that purpose and not just absorb it into the general fund. So as it relates to these partnerships, we have two recommendations. First, the money that's currently built into our budget, we would recommend that you maintain the budgeted support that's already included, but to ask the recipients of those funds to provide an annual report. So it should be a practice for this body, anybody receiving money from the town should report on what the money was used for. Who was served, how did the program work, what was the money spent on, those kinds of details. So we would, if this is supported, we would reach out to those partners and just let them know that we're going to request a report. And then secondly, we would also recommend that moving forward beyond 2023, that we adopt an open and transparent process for reviewing and evaluating requests moving forward. So we would recommend that the town council identify their highest priorities, their areas of greatest need, things that they think are the most important for the citizens in this community. And then to develop an application and a review process. And whatever that application and those criteria are, we would post all of that online as well as a schedule so that people understand, what to expect in the process. And it would just be available to a number of our different community partners to apply for. And then to create that annual review schedule. Moving forward, we can build this into your annual budget review process. So we can dedicate one of the work sessions to review these requests. So whatever that date is, we would back up a month or so and have the application posted and, make sure we give everybody ample time to respond. So all of that can be considered as part of your annual review, annual budget review. And then for the unallocated funds, that's that 51,000 or so, $51,235. We would recommend a similar process, adopt an open and transparent process. It could be the same application, it could be a slightly different application depending on what the council's preference is. Similarly, we would post that online, allow our community providers to review the information and apply. This can be a one-time allocation, or depending on who responds and what the interest of the council is, it could be something that gets, a renewed request that could come in year after year. So that is what we would recommend for these funds. Do you all have any questions?
Any questions or comments?
I included a draft application. It's just a draft. It's just to kind of give us all something to look at and respond to that we could use as a jumping off point. But I think the application is something that we can work on even outside of this forum. But
And I would briefly suggest that it's another thing that I've helped a client through where they were, when I first worked with them, getting requests all the time and from every different direction, and it's just hard to say no. There's so many different things that you want to be charitable about that also can fit the public purpose doctrine. But in the interest of transparency and being able to, verify all of that, to slow it down and say one time a year, here's how much we've got to allocate, one time a year come in and give us your application and let us evaluate it. The only thing, and I think, so I'm in complete agreement, I think you need a process like this if you're gonna continue these sorts of allocations. The one thing I'd add is I developed for them and can easily get to you a form contract. And I think I'd want to make it a contract instead of just tell them we're going to request that they show us how they've used our funds. They know they're not getting them until they've signed on the line that we have to see how it gets allocated. We need to see your budget, we need to see next year's, so forth. So, it's more than just a request. We have to do some more legal teeth to it.
Good.
I like that.
Sounds good. I should also recommend or mention that we can, when those applications come in, we can share all of those applications with all council members, and I'm gonna have to train myself too. All of our council members, we can have a discussion like this during the public meeting. You could also choose to assign a subcommittee to review those first, kind of take a first stab at it, and then make a recommendation. In the end, the decision will be by the whole council, not just the committee members, but it would be a way to maybe, streamline the evaluation and review process.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
If we approve this, can you get this, will this application go to some nonprofits very soon?
Yeah, we would reach out to the people we already know who are working in the area and in the community. And then we would post it for those, if we don't know, at least it's on our website for anybody who's interested who can look at it. And word will spread, I'm sure, so.
My only request would be that we expedite that, because there are people in need and money in the bank is not helping them.
Well, if anybody has any revisions to the application, maybe if you can get those to me by the end of the week, and then we'll get everything ready to get posted.
Thank you.
I think by being more transparent about this process, we'll actually be able to raise more funding.
Yeah, I didn't mention this, but in reviewing and researching, how towns or what the limitations of using this money are, it was very clear that there's nothing to prevent a town from soliciting donations for these purposes, as long as you can guarantee that it serves that public purpose, that it meets those two tests. All right.
Any further questions for Shannon? Okay.
I think we are asking you to make a motion to just support this direction.
Okay, anyone want to make a motion to head in this direction?
I make a motion to expand our efforts to approve this, what should we call it? Next step, moving forward.
And I think it includes the establishment of the application, the process, and the schedule that we're
Right.
recommending.
Establishing the application, the schedule, and the process. So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item, department and manager reports. Shannon?
Thank you, Mayor. As part of our effort to streamline the delivery of our reports, we're going to do every month we'll do a town manager report where I can cover probably more than one category. We'll continue to supply the individual departmental reports in your packets. That kind of gives you those metrics, the data that the different departments report on. And then periodically, probably on approximately around a quarterly basis, we'll have those departments come in and do a more detailed report to the Board of Commissioners. So this evening, I will be doing the town manager report. To begin, under administration, we typically report on any new contracts or purchase orders. We had one in the last month, and that was for French Broad Paving. And that was for repair and repaving of the parking lot at Roy Pope Park. So some of you may have already noticed that work was done. Quite honestly, we just got kind of lucky. We already have our street repaving project going on with French Broad Paving. They were already doing work on the roads in the area. We knew that this was a maintenance issue at Roy Pope, so we just asked them, hey, what would it take for you guys to mobilize over by the park and do this little repair for us? And so it was a pretty inexpensive purchase order, $12,700 to get that whole parking area repaved and restriped. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It looks really good.
Looks good.
And then, so that's really it for contracts and POs. That's pretty typical this time of year as we really close out one fiscal year and open a new fiscal year, because all of our attention gets really refocused on the audit. We did have our auditors here last week. They were scheduled to be here the entire week, but they left after 3 days, which is great news. That means they were able to get through the material very easily. It was very comprehensible, very organized. We're very optimistic that that audit will be a clean audit, but we are still awaiting that final report and findings, and certainly once we receive them, we will let you know. I want to thank Sherry and Janice for all their hard work on that. They're really the ones who put us, who's really upped our reputation on the finance front. So we're really grateful for their work. Staffing, just a quick update. We have made an offer to our zoning, to somebody to fill our zoning administrator position. That offer has been accepted. They are expecting to start work at the end of the month, so we're very excited to welcome a new staff member. Stormwater administrator interviews are beginning this week, so we have some interest in that position now, so we're very excited to get those interviews underway. Our project manager position is vacant. Today was Luke Williams' last day as project manager, so that position will become a vacant tomorrow. We're going to explore internal candidates first before opening that up to the external world. And then our police sergeant, I believe, is the only position remaining vacant in our police department, and we are holding on that for now. Quite honestly, all of our energy and attention is being it's been devoted to filling those officer positions, because that's where the need is greatest. Police sergeant is the easiest supervisor position for us to cover, that daytime sergeant position, because we have lieutenant and chief both available who can kind of help act as supervisor in those situations. So we're holding on that for now, but hopefully in the next few months we'll be able to circle back on that. RFPs and the RFQ. So both the RFPs for the town's comprehensive plan and the stormwater assessment and prioritization closed late last week. We were a little nervous that we weren't getting a lot of interest, and then on the deadline day, they all started rolling in. So we've got a good response. We're very pleased. So we're looking forward to kind of diving into those and figuring out next steps. The RFQ for Town Hall and Town Center feasibility, the draft is complete. We're still working on identifying the third site to study. We have the 2 town-owned property sites. We have identified a third site. We're working with the property owner on a memorandum of understanding. Before we publicly study this, we want to make sure they're on board and they're okay with that. There's also a community partner who has kind of joined the discussion, so we're kind of working through all of those details. So hopefully, we hope, I really want to try to get this posted by the end of this month, but it might be early September, so stay tuned. Woodfin Greenway Blueway update. Riverside Park, as you all know, we've moved into 90% construction drawings, so that work is underway. It's progressing as it should. This is the point where we start getting really that fine detail grading, the material selection, the construction details are all getting worked out. So this is kind of an exciting time. It's really when it starts to come to life. We are still awaiting news on our 3 pending grant applications. We expect to hear from at least 2 of those 3 this month, possibly as early as next week. So we'll be sure to let you all know once we get the word. The Whitewater Wave physical modeling is currently underway and it's going well. I've received 2 updates so far from our team over in Prague. What we're learning so far is that the physical modeling has really proved beneficial. Computer modeling can only get you so far. Actually building the model has really helped them a lot to figure out how to adjust and where to adjust to optimize the wave, so that this is really going to be a world-class feature. The Greenway is fully funded. I think we all have heard that news already. And right now, Buncombe County is acting as Woodfin's agent on the Greenway construction, and they are working with the design team, meeting with property owners, revisiting the Greenway alignment in a few cases, and then talking about moving forward with some of those easements. They're planning a community meeting, I believe, next month, and when we get those details, we'll be sure to share those.
Who is that now for Buncombe County since everybody left?
We've mostly been working with Allison Danes. She's the new Parks and Recreation Program Manager. I'm not exactly sure what her title is.
What was her name?
Allison Danes.
Okay.
And then Tim Love is still involved with the project as well. And then with Silverline Park, we are currently working with consultants and staff on a maintenance plan for the park. This is the first time we've had a facility that has constructed wetlands. And so it requires a different kind of maintenance approach rather than just the mowing of ball fields, which has been the town's practice in the past. So Equinox has helped us put together some, like a checklist of things to start to look for. We're going to pull our staff together with some of their staff and kind of discuss the most optimal way to approach the maintenance of this park. And then our Parks and Greenways Advisory Committee is currently examining options for the Silverline Park building. We met as a small group to re-review the old plans or the earlier investigations. We think there's some, not flaws, but rather didn't comprehensively look at what we could do with that building or the property. So taking a look at that, and hopefully in the next, if not next month, the month after that, we'll have a recommendation from that body before this elected body. So hopefully we'll get moving on that building as well. Other park news, pickleball. We had really good press coverage for our temporary courts that got installed. Right now, the courts are in, people are using them, it's wonderful. We are looking at options for temporary fencing. We tried one approach, didn't work very well, or it didn't look very good. But of course, as the nature of the game, there are stray balls, so having some sort of temporary fencing would be helpful. So that's hopefully something that we'll be able to get installed soon. Signage is posted telling people what the project is about. We also have a survey online, so there's a QR code that people can use their phones to jump to the survey. It's just a very simple, short survey with just a few data fields asking the date, and time, how many people are playing, whether or not they live in Woodfin, that sort of thing. Just some basics, just so we can start to collect some data on that and gauge the interest in the community. And that is it. I want to thank the PGAC too for their work on that. They really rolled up their sleeves. They're the ones who got out there, cleaned the courts, taped them, measured them out, taped them up, put up the temporary fencing, helped us put the signage together. So they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
If someone wants to, can it be reserved?
Right now it's on a
How it
first come,
works.
first basis, but there are 2 courts, so hopefully there's enough room for more than one game at a time.
It's just curious.
Any other questions for Shannon? Okay. Does any board member have anything else to bring? We have to have a closed session. But before that, do we have any comments or questions or what have you? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting and go into closed session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. We are adjourned. Take a 5-minute break.
How'd I get out all that? How'd I?
You'll just go each one and see that little tiny
Oh, I do.
X. Just
Okay.
X, X,
Okay.
X. And,
Buddy, Kim, are you
the
gonna
other
mention
thing I
that
was gonna
in
tell you.
closed session?
What was it? I
Let me ask you
forgot.
this.
Yeah.
Is that like,
Have you seen it or not? It's my
Sean
question.
listed
Okay,
it
that's
right.
all.
Now, I do it the same way, just hit that
Just that
little
little
X?
X.
Are you
Yep.
gonna make a statement?
And that'll take care of it.
You gonna make a statement or stay silent on it?
No, I just have one of these. There's
Just
something
curious.
else I was gonna show you. I know what it was. When you go back.
Yeah, I think that's,
Shoot, I don't. Why should you?
it's rolling. That's
When you go
that's a very good
back to
thing.
this, and this was something that I wasn't, is when we go back
Motion to adjourn.
Now we're back in regular session. Have any comments from the board, questions?
Make a motion to approve the closed session minutes from July 19th? Yes. 19th.
I second it.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? We're adjourned.